This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. Bono once said, "You've got to live with your dreams, so don't make them so hard." I really enjoyed this conversation with the co-hosts of the SharkPod podcast, Mark Baker and Luke Curry. They're in-laws, possibly more like brothers, peas in their own pod, but in truth, they couldn't be any more different. We chat about life, careers, what motivates you, and it turns out that fear can be the strongest motivator of all. I hope you enjoy my conversation with workaholic Mark and cool hand Luke. A big welcome to Luke Curry and Mark Baker, the SharkPod twins. A big welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing, boys?
Great. Delighted to be here, Greg. This is Luke speaking, and Mark's out there in Glenageary. How are you doing, Mark?
Yeah, delighted to be on the other side for once. Yeah.
Yes, and it is new for us. This is the first time we've been on someone else's podcast as a team.
We may start to take over. You may notice that, Greg. So just be ready for that.
That's okay. It's supposed to be a conversation anyway, not an interview. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What kind of a day did you have? How about you, Luke?
Today was a decent day. As if I couldn't get enough podcasts in my life. I've launched another one at work that we're doing, and I set a target of 20 in the month, and it was a ridiculous thing to do. So I've been kind of doing that for the last couple of days, kind of flat out back to back with interviewing different partners in different parts of Europe and stuff like that. And, as you know, it's not just the interview. There's a lot of editing and doing the copy and stuff afterwards. So it's been a busy couple of days, but I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah. And you're working with HubSpot.
Yeah.
So where do podcasts sit into your kind of communications mix, and how is it viewed internally? Like, you were saying there, you're chatting with a few of your colleagues. Do they see the relevance of it? Do they think it's a pain in the backside, or is it a new thing, by the way?
So it's a brand new thing, and I really had to convince a lot of people to do it. And it's funny because once something gets off the ground, everyone kind of, before the idea was put into practice, no one really cared. But now that it's ongoing, everyone has an idea for it, or how is this going to affect X or Y, or the idea is that we're giving our partners a voice. So now when customers come to the HubSpot website, it's not just a 2D writing on the directory about the partner. They're actually going to get to know the people that behind the business and what they offer their customers. We do. It's something that I don't think HubSpot's done before, where it's a very open conversation. It's not so much question and answers. It's just a chat about how to make sure the customers get the best product.
Yeah. And tell me, what's your role there?
So I'm Enterprise Partner Acquisition Manager for EMEA. So it's my job to find kind of bigger companies to help us sell HubSpot to bigger companies, if you want to put it like that. So like, say if usually a big company, like we've got great partners that are, under 100 employees, but usually if a company is over 10,000 employees, they usually buy, IT services from a larger company. So we're trying to hook up with those types of companies to kind of fit into that model, So that's the idea. I've only started this a couple of months ago, so we're still putting it all together.
You're there a good few years. I saw from LinkedIn, of course. LinkedIn is the Bible according to everything. And you had kind of like a checkered sort of a journey to the place, didn't you? Because I just saw you were doing art and design at one point, then you got all serious and put on a suit and went to Smurfit Business School.
Yeah. I went.
Are you totally confused, Luke?
Well, do you know what? I don't know. When I was growing up, I wanted to, be a businessman. When I was a child, I was growing up it was just my mom and my sister, and my mom would buy me all these books by Donald Trump, The Art of the Deal and all that type of stuff. So I got that in my mind that I wanted to do this kind of business stuff and sales and stuff like that. But when I went to college, I came out of college and it was just after the recession had kind of kicked off, and there wasn't a lot of graduate jobs. So we went to Smurfit. That was what a few people out of my college did. And then I got into this kind of mindset when I was there Mark does like I told Mark that I'm not a competitive person, but I seem to be competing all the time. And when you're in Smurfit, there's kind of a funnel into a very tight, a very particular type of job that a lot of those people do. So for those people listening, Smurfit Business School is kind of the UCD graduate business school, and most people go into like management consulting or they go into financial services out of that. And I was no different. I took a job in Davy Stockbrokers out of there, and I was there for a couple of years for my sins.
When you see that popping up on your LinkedIn CV, you're kind of like, will I go there or will I not, you know?
Yeah.
I was always afraid, Greg, that when Luke was badmouthing the likes of Davey, well, his time there, it wasn't for him, but then they kind of ended up doing a bit of that themselves after anyway, more recently. So, yeah. But Luke wasn't, just to go back to the you went to Dunleary Institute, what's it called? The Institute of Art and Design and Business or Entrepreneurship. It wasn't actually art, it was entrepreneurship, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So we were doing the business course in the art school, which was kind of strange because there was two kind of sides of this college where there was all of the businessy people in one side and all the artsy people on the other. And I remember one day they came in and they had replaced our couch with a paper mache version of it, and we didn't get the joke. They thought it was hilarious. So, it was an interesting way, and it was good though because it was a good mix for a lot of people. A lot of the kind of businessy minded people were hooking up with the more art and design and filmmaking people, and a lot of weird businesses kind of came out of that, so it was kind of a cool mix.
Tell me what you like most about what you do on HubSpot.
I'll tell you what. Brillo pads?
Yeah.
I love Brillo pads because they actually work. Do you know what I mean? And there's so little amount of things in life that do exactly what they say in the tin. And HubSpot allows our customers to really understand their customers better, really tailor messaging to them so they know their customers. They have all the analytics about their behavior online, what they've bought in the past, and they kind of shake that up and make sure that their messaging really makes sense to people. And it also allows sales teams to manage their sales process in a kind of a more simple way than something like Salesforce, where it's just a nightmare to set up. So that's the best part about the job, is that the product is like a Brillo pad.
He's a good salesman, Mark, isn't he?
You can tell he's used that line before, can't you?
Yeah, so HubSpot is no better than a cheap old Brillo pad. That's kind of like the bottom line.
Yeah, well, it is cheaper than Salesforce, so that's
there's a kind of a key paradigm shift in your career that you missed out on. Luke went to Canada after leaving finance, and then that's where you discovered sales and probably what you were more suited for.
Yeah, exactly. So I was really out of the loop in the finance part. I didn't fit in with the kind of the old boys club. I felt a little bit still, and I didn't know anybody there. They all seemed to go to the same schools and all that type of stuff. I took a trip kind of around the world. Actually, it was around the world. It was circumnavigation, went all the way around for about 2 years. I went to South America for about 4 months before moving to Canada. And when I went to Canada, I really wanted to get into technology and technology sales. So I sat down with a list. I made a list of all the tech companies in Vancouver at the time. And I went through every single one of them and looked for Irish sounding names in those businesses. And basically just started cold calling those guys, seeing if I could get a meeting. And there was a girl called Aisling Breen in one of the companies that I called. She wasn't Irish. Her parents were from Tipperary. And anyway, so we started talking about that. And then she got me in to a great company there and did very well in the sales organization there. I was really kind of motivated, especially when you're abroad. I don't know what happens. Yeah, I feel like, it's like a free roll of dice, you can.
A quick question for you on the Davy thing. And this is as much a question about Davy as it is about culture. When a scandal happens and, there's fraud or whatever bad thing happens, sometimes I think the bad thing is just the pimple popping. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's where the culture has exposed itself. Would you have had any hint of that at all when you were there? Because if the people at the top are doing that influences the people behind them, the types of people that they recruit, the behaviors that people think is okay. Would you have had any hint of that there when you were there?
it was kind of interesting. I've never worked in a place like it where, maybe because that type of stuff goes on, they were definitely kind of hand picking their winners or the people that they would back early in the career, and it would be kind of grooming them for the next level, not really based on anything. Or I remember I tried to do the chartered financial analyst exams, because that was the kind of the go-to exams for investment managers and stuff like that. And I remember they wouldn't pay for my exams, but they would pay for the guy next to me to do his exams. And I just thought that was a crazy way of doing things. And that type of rot and the mentality in a company, like you said, maybe you're right, it's like a pimple popping. Eventually, those types of practices, that type of, I don't know. I remember, it's funny, Mark, I kind of give out about Davey quite a lot, but I learned so much about how things work from a financial point of view. I had a great time there with the people I worked with, that they were on my level, but like all the kind of graduates that had come in, we had a great time. But the atmosphere was never conducive to like a happy place. It was never a happy place to work.
With the nature of what they were doing, could it have been a happy place? Do you know?
Yeah.
Like I this conversation, I think I said this to you with the economist Chris Johns, and he did a lot of work in banking. I was asking him, is money evil? So if your whole job is kind of like making money for people, does that lend itself to not being a happy place? It's not wholesome anyway. That's for sure.
I think that it really could have been. Like, for all of the kind of bad press they get they've got recently in the news about particular deals that were done, or they've had a few scandals over the years and some really, really nasty stuff. I remember when I was there, something particularly ugly came out in the press about one particular person there and what he had done. But I don't think it had to be like that. I think for the most part, they really did a great job for their clients. They have thousands of clients. And I worked in the valuations department, and some of the returns that they were getting for their just regular, maybe people who've saved all their lives and have a few $100,000 kind of nest egg. They do a great job for those people as well, So you can't say they're doing those types of practices all the time, but I think that there's a little bit of temptation that's mixed in there. And if it's like that show Secret Eaters, when you think people aren't watching.
I've never seen that show. I don't know if that's a common popular show, Luke, is it?
I don't know. It might be. So these people who are trying to lose weight say that nothing's working, and then they put secret cameras in and they see that they're lying about the. I feel like that's the same kind of moral trap can happen in finance, and I think those guys just fell into it, or
Yeah, and to me, before I jump over to Mark, just kind of one last question there, Luke, is your mum and dad, what did they do?
So my dad was a really interesting guy. We all moved to Canada in the 90s, or sorry, in the 80s rather, 86. And I was born in 89 there in Canada. And he was a really kind of entrepreneurial guy, very ambitious. And he did very well. And within, say, I think like 7 years, he had a couple of car dealerships there, a leasing company, vending machines, very busy guy. And then he died when I was 7 in Canada, at work actually. And then my mom, who was kind of a childminder, but at that stage, we were actually doing quite well. I don't think she was minding any kids at that stage, but she was driving around in her T-Bird that my dad had got her for her birthday. So that was the type of life we were kind of living at that stage. And then everything kind of went downhill. We moved back to Ireland within a month or so. And my mom worked at childminding, chambermaid jobs, just working class jobs, I would say, for while I was growing up.
Yeah, keep the show on the road stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And
keep the big guy fed.
Yeah, exactly. Keep me in Weetabix. At the time, I was a hungry guy growing up,
And tell me, how does a 7-year-old process dad dying and things like that?
I think it was more difficult for my sister, who was a little bit older. She was about 12. I think when you're 7, you kind of, it was just like a different chapter, different life in a month. You're just, in a different country. I had a funny accent, and I was put into a school in Sallynoggin. It was just a different world that I was put into. So I think I was saying this during my kind of wedding speech, when I was like talking about my mom. I was saying like, although things were, choppy there for a few years, I never, there's only a few days that weren't great. Most days I was playing football. I said to Mark, I didn't really know that we didn't have any money, growing up really. Everyone else around me was just the same.
Your mum did a good job if all that went well. And obviously, I asked you the question about what that was like as a 7-year-old. You can imagine the upheaval in her head trying to keep all of that stuff going, What was your dad's name?
His name was Mel.
Mel, okay. And have you been curious about him? Did you try and discover more? And do you get sad when you do discover more? Or
so this guy, we could do a whole podcast on this guy.
I think we might have to.
Yeah, he's he had all these different angles to his personality. He was kickboxing champion. He was a bouncer. He was helping people random people would stop me on the street and be like, "Oh, your dad, he taught me how to drive. No one could teach me how to drive." Or your dad got me a job in the council. I'm like, I don't understand what are all these people. Someone came up to me in the gym in Dunleary before and started crying when he saw me. Well, all these weird stuff happened. It's like an enigma, this guy. He had a huge, a JFK style funeral in Dunleary, big funeral in Canada. He touched a lot of people. And I think that he's only 34 when he died. So I think that really kind of shocked people as well. There's people who have tattoos of him that I don't really know and my mom don't really know. Do you know that kind of way? It's very strange. But
there's a big story on him, I think.
Absolutely. I think, and I went to Canada and I was kind of trying to keep the story going a little bit. So my first job in Canada was in a car dealership. Yeah. And actually it was just the only one I could get. And when I first arrived, it was the second day after I got there, and it was a real eye opener to what he actually did and to that type of way. So when I came back from Canada, it was a little bit like putting that to bed a little bit. Went over to Canada, saw what he was trying to do. And it was, when I came back to Ireland when I was 28, after the 2-year trip, it was very much, that was kind of all those weird feelings and stuff like that were all put to bed. So it's been good.
What's your mum's name?
Geraldine.
And tell me, the other fella there, Mark, how are you connected? I know you're in-laws. How does that relationship work?
I'm trying to figure out what age. I would have been about 17 and Luke would have been, what are you, 5 years younger than me?
Yeah, I think I was 12.
Yeah, so I'm married to Kim, Luke's sister. So we're together since we're 17. So I stayed over quite a lot. So we became more like, I wouldn't say, it was like an older, I suppose it was like an older brother, and then became friends as he was bigger. He was always bigger than me, actually, probably. Still is. Yeah, so we had a lot of the same interests. I don't know if that was my influence on him or we just kind of grew up in the kind of same area and stuff, but pretty much just long into the night speaking about entrepreneurship, and that's how the podcast SharkPod came about. We just said we record these conversations we've been having for the last 15 years. So yeah, so we're brothers-in-law. I was Luke's best man at his wedding. So pretty close, as close as you can be without being biologically related.
It nearly sounds like you are kind of brothers though, doesn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. I do have a brother as well. I'll give him a shout out, Kevin, but he's my biological brother. Yeah, I suppose me and Luke have a lot to live up to when it comes to his dad. He got a lot done in 34 years.
There's a guy that used to work with us, and his dad, I don't know, was from one of the Africas anyway, and he went out there to visit his dad's family and everything, and he went out there with his father. His father was living in London. So he got really confused when they went to this country. I can't think of the exact country. But he was being introduced to everyone as, this is my brother, and this is your uncle. And he's like, I only thought he had kind of like one or whatever. And they do actually process it as, if you've got a strong relationship, well, you're my brother. It's kind of a really nice way of looking at it, isn't it? To kind of bestow that honor on someone. We always talk brother from a different mother and all that kind of thing. But it does kind of go, well, this is where our relationship is. And having those things in your life, I think it's really important. And, and being able to use that language as another clever way of using words and stuff, I think it kind of works anyway.
Yeah, I think people throw around the word brother quite a lot. It's an Irish thing to say as well as other cultures, but genuinely we probably are like brothers. The only thing we don't we never really physically fought like brothers do, because Luke actually did do kickboxing, so I never pushed him on it.
Another thing, trying to be Mel.
And tell me, while you're talking about podcasts, were you both avid podcast listeners? You know, so obviously the idea popped out that you were going to do your own one.
Yeah, it was the usual. It was kind of Tim Ferriss, you know, those kind of, like, there was a lot of Tony Robbins kind of stuff we'd listen to, kind of motivational stuff, and obviously Joe Rogan, but we weren't trying to be Joe Rogan, so we were just really interested in podcasts. Probably listened to them for a long time. So we're quite inquisitive, really wanted to speak to interesting people. It really came about because we went to the same school actually. So I would have been nearly leaving when he was starting. But we didn't have the best guidance counselor and stuff like that. Maybe didn't have the best mentors. Didn't really have any mentors now that I think about it. So we would have loved to have a podcast like the SharkPod, where you have people entrepreneurs doing interesting things, or people just living a different kind of lifestyle. You don't have to, get 600 points in the Leaving Cert, that kind of career path, which everybody knows about and is actually shockingly still in place. So I think that's where it kind of came from. We would let's be that podcast that we would have loved to have listened to, and actually really would have made a difference I'm happy with my career path, but it really would have made an impact, I think, on our choices.
And Luke, what can people expect on the SharkPod podcast?
On the SharkPod podcast, it's really about the tagline is business and lifestyle design, and we threw in the lifestyle design just so we could reach out to anyone we thought was really interesting to have a chat to. So we've had everyone from startup people to people who have sold their business to loads of like great artists, and I love those conversations as well because I know nothing about art. So Mark kind of leads those ones with his background, and I kind of tag along, but I'm learning all the time. And then we also have people who are trying to climb Mount Everest and have interesting stories about the earthquake that happened there. And it's like, I was talking to somebody actually today about my new podcast and work, and they're saying, what are you going to do if a load of partners want to come on? Like, you won't have time to do anything. I'm like, I think everyone is interesting. I think especially anyone who has a business, there's a story there. There's some sort of trials and tribulations that's going to be interesting to dig into. And the SharkPod, if you're into living your best life, you're going to find something there. It doesn't matter what your passion is, if it's art, if it's climbing, if it's starting a business. There's something for everybody.
And I agree with you. I think everyone does absolutely have a story. There's little nuggets in every single thing. And Mark, in terms of your guests, were there any kind of like big surprises along the way with some of the ones? Any more memorable ones you can think of?
It's interesting to see, like, everybody has their own favorites, right, for their own particular reasons, because everybody's different. I was thinking of becoming an animator when I finished school, but I didn't for whatever reason. And, we had an Oscar nominated Irish animator, Tom Moore, on from Cartoon Saloon in Kilkenny. So I just thought I'd love to speak to someone who actually made a success of this, who's Irish, Oscar nominated for all their cartoons, their animation, the animated films that they've done. So I just reached out and I got him on. We just picked his brains for an hour. Like, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing what you can do with a podcast. If anybody who's ever interested in setting up their own, like, it doesn't take a lot to set up. And once you get going, like, think of anyone and any area, any subject, and you can potentially speak to an expert in that area for an hour. What other way could you possibly do that? Like, they give you their time. But so I would say probably the most popular one is probably Graham Kenny, who's an Irish solicitor. Interesting background. Like, he'd be well known for the fact that he's Conor McGregor's solicitor for some stuff. I think he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, is he?
Yeah.
Graham?
Yeah.
But his story was just unbelievable. Like, you probably tell it better than me. His kind of Celtic Tiger property empire that he built, and then losing it all.
There's a real some of the guests we've had on have really blown us away, and we had to chat after their interview as well, to go over it, because there's this kind of thread running through it. Some of my favorite ones, people who were really doing well in the Celtic Tiger blew up completely and then made a comeback. I don't know if that's because that goes along the hero's journey type of timeline, but I love talking to people like that because I love talking to, say, Gavin J. Gallagher, who's a property developer. At the time in the Celtic Tiger, he's living in Marbella. He's got the flash cars. He's flying all his mates, like doing all these mad things. And then for years, he's in the wilderness until he makes his comeback, And now he's doing great. But and some of the stories that he has of just flipping properties without putting money down, like that was really, it seemed like it was a mad time,
Yeah, it was a weird time. I chatted to you on your podcast about it, but I remember when that happened, like some really, really all guns blazing entrepreneurs coming into you with some crazy projects, all positive, and you saw it just falling apart on them. And I remember at the time thinking, they were being squeezed from all sides, and you absolutely knew at the same time they're the very ones that we needed to get things going again, to start trying things again. And burying them wasn't going to do anyone any favors. There's one particular guy who came into us and he wanted a brand new magazine. It was a magazine called Green Ireland. And like if you think this is back 2009, 2010, and he said, this is where things are going. And of course, when recession hit, no one gave a shite about green stuff. It was all about survival. Who cared about being eco-friendly? It's like, be survival friendly. But his product was incredible. And then we struggled to get paid and all that kind of stuff. And it was actually horrible having to have those conversations, trying to extract money from him for some of the stuff we were like in the red on. And I remember still having this huge admiration for him because I knew he had balls to have gone for this thing in the first place. And he was a good character. And there's a bit of a devil in all of these guys, or a devil is the way, but you kind of need that, don't you? You absolutely need that bit of spark, and they're never down. Those guys are never, ever down. And I suppose there's a bit of that in everyone. Mark, your path is a bit weird. And it's funny, you heard me chatting to Luke and I'm asking questions about his path on LinkedIn and everything. And when I look at Mark Baker on LinkedIn, you're deliberately creating a picture of, a recruitment guy in financial services. And that's the full picture that you kind of put out there. But I'd say that doesn't go 25% of who you are. And I kind of have two questions. One is fill in the blanks for me, because I know there's so much other stuff going on. And the second part is, why do you just portray that part of you on LinkedIn? And I'm curious, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'm a chameleon to do with different platforms. LinkedIn is for, professionals, not necessarily professionals, but working people. It's all about business and work and maybe not so much art or creativity. I mix it in a little bit. And then Instagram, if you look on Instagram, I'm more of an artist. I'm the artist. So on LinkedIn, I'm an accountant and I'm a finance recruitment owner of a business. On Instagram, I'm always all of them, and I don't believe you have to be one thing. On Instagram, it's obviously more of a visual medium. It's mostly my paintings. I sprinkle it in the entrepreneurship side that I'm passionate about, and that would be my business, the recruitment business. Twitter, probably a bit of a mix of everything because it's Twitter, and who really knows what Twitter is for. Facebook, again, that's more for families or family and friends or whatever. But really, I'm portraying that. I have a suit and tie on in the picture, in the photo, if you're looking at it. It's my biggest part of my professional life, I suppose. It's where I make my most money. So I give most of my energy to my recruitment business. So we're a 5-person finance recruitment business. Most of us are all qualified chartered accountants who weren't the best Big Four auditors and just did it because we didn't know what else to do, really. And it's a good platform to jump from, as you know yourself. And yeah, we basically get accountants jobs that we don't want to do. So we're broadly finance, but we not just accountants. But if you look on LinkedIn, I do use my art background and I sprinkle it in. And that's how a lot of people will actually remember me as, oh, that's the guy who does the paintings, because my paintings on LinkedIn, when I post them once a month, get like 20,000 views. But my job post about a new partner opportunity in a Big Four firm will get about 200 views. So it's the aim of the game is to get exposure and to get out there. So I do leverage the art. Maybe I could, you tell me, you're the expert, Greg. I could probably be leveraging it more. I should probably tell you my journey. It might make a bit more sense then. Again, to go back to school, didn't know what I wanted to do. No real guidance. Always good at art. Like I knew I could get a decent leaving cert. So I tried to get architecture. I missed. They forgot to ring me for an interview, so I didn't get architecture. So I just done arts. So history. I have a degree in history and Greek and Roman civilization. If anybody has any use for that, let me know, because I couldn't find any use at all. But while I was in college in UCD, I started. My brother said to me, like, you should approach some galleries with your paintings and stuff. And so I did. So I paint kind of famous faces, realism. So hopefully they look real. And I got into galleries. So I was working in Marks and Spencer's, stacking shelves. And at the same time, my paintings started selling for thousands of euros, because at the same time, it was kind of the Celtic Tiger as well. So I packed in Marks and Spencer's, finished my degree, and became an artist for a year. So I couldn't paint fast enough. I still am. I'm in the Green Gallery in Stephen's Green Shopping Centre. Really good footfall there. Got quite well known. I had an exhibition in London. Done lots of different things, but then the Celtic Tiger ended that year, whatever year it was, 2007 or 2008. So I tossed a coin, said I better get a real job. I panicked, really, to be honest. Even at age, whatever I was, 20 or 21, panicked, and I said I'll become an accountant or a solicitor because they pay the most. And tossed a coin. I think it ended on solicitor, but I got the books, I think, or my brother had the books or something, and I was like, I'm not reading. I've just read for 3 years. I'm not reading anymore. I'll become an accountant. Did a postgraduate diploma in DCU. Struggled through it, but I think I can put my mind to anything, which is actually it can be a negative trait in a way, because I didn't want to do it. I just did it because I thought I had to be safe, and became an accountant. Did the Big Four thing, in with the best of the best. I was average. And then but underpinning all that is actually a love of entrepreneurship. I always wanted to work for myself. So I thought, great, I'll be an accountant. I'll work for myself. Then I was kind of trying that on the side, and I was like, I hate this. It's just not me. I was in the wrong, I was just in the wrong lane. So I said, why be an average accountant when I can be very good at something else? So this is long-winded, but I met a guy who was a recruitment consultant, and he had a similar background to me, and he'd moved in. And I think my landlord owned a recruitment business as well. I was like, I'm renting from him. Something's not making sense here. You know, I'm the qualified accountant, and I'm giving him money. So your man said to me, look, you've got a good personality, like for this kind of thing. You have the knowledge. It's really important to have the knowledge of essentially what you're talking about or what you're selling. You know, you're not really selling it, but it is an element of selling. You have to understand the roles you're talking about. You have a good network in accounting. Give it a go. So I gave it a go. It was a big leap to move. I had 2 babies at the time, so 2 under 2, probably around 2 under 3. But I just felt I was going nowhere, and I just felt I had to do something big, or else I could see the path ahead of me. So I like the fact, you know, the harder I worked, the more I got paid. It was the closest thing to having my own business. I thought recruitment was. I had no exposure to sales. You know, I wish I did. But went in, gave it my best shot. Turned out I wasn't bad at it. And then 3 years later, the guy who actually hired me, we went into business together. So we're backed by, people think I've been quite lucky at times. You might see me, I've been lucky to meet some famous people that I admire and stuff. But like, I would send out emails and send out 100 emails looking for something, and one person might get back to me, and that might make the news. So I've always been inclined to just send out emails, ring people, see what comes back. It's a numbers game. I've good quality at what I'm doing. So all I need is the opportunity. So I just emailed the biggest person in my recruitment, which was James Caan from the Dragon's Den. That's how he made his millions, living on his yacht in Monaco, and got back to me, not directly, but his people, and ended up getting investment from James Caan. So rather than bootstrapping it, we took investment, and 3 years later, we're thank God, doing very well.
With the nature of that role, you book candidates.
Yeah.
You get a commission.
Yeah.
Do you need investment?
No, you don't. But if you want to go big quickly, it helps. Don't need it. But the first 6 months can be quite dry when it comes to cash flow. If you think about it, you have a non-compete. You have to see out your non-compete. You can't do anything for whatever amount of months that might be, depending on the company. And an amicable split from where I used to be as well. We're still good friends and everything with the owner. So what happens is you have to start from scratch. You build your database of people who are looking for jobs, and then you have to onboard clients who you can only start reaching out to on day one. And I think you don't have to have an office, but we went big and we got a nice office. And when you do your work well, you place the person in their role, but then you don't get paid until they start. So some people have a 3-month notice period. And then there's some people have, 30 days, 60 days terms. So it could be almost 6 months by the time you're getting your first paycheck. So that's probably the main reason. And then there's also the knowledge of scaling a business that James kind of had, and the back staff that he had, to do, marketing, payroll, all that kind of stuff as well, to leave us to do what we're good at.
So beyond the check to fund you in that initial period, was there other benefits? Like you mentioned, James Can, was he involved with his advisors, or how did that work?
Yeah, no, indirectly, yeah. Came over, we did a big launch event as well, a few months in the can't remember, one of the big hotels in Dublin. We made a few of the papers, the news, radio shows and stuff. So his credibility and the name, it did help. To be honest, what's more important is actually our knowledge of the Dublin market and our connect. Dublin, Ireland is a very small place. So you can have the big name, big famous name behind you, but that actually is nothing in comparison to your own network, which is mad to think about.
Yeah.
We have like a lot of support when it comes to admin and stuff, and advice and the best technology and stuff like that.
Okay. I was chatting to a guy one day, and some event somewhere, coffee break, scone and a coffee when we used to do all those things in person. And he was doing leadership management training. Okay. Lovely guy. I think he's in New Zealand since. Just chatting away at the break, and how was your weekend? Yeah, well, I was training the Irish rowing team. I trained the Irish rowing team. Like, what the hell? That's incredible. That's so interesting. He said, yeah, but, in a business context, I don't like anyone to know that. And I'm thinking, what's your problem? In the blink of an eye, you have now become an incredibly interesting person, as opposed to the business coach, whatever. And I think any of these things add color to who you are. And whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, this is just my personal opinion. And if I was to, and just say in the regular course of business, Mark, you'd sent me a LinkedIn connection request. You see the person's picture, you get the name of the company and the one-liner. The minute you become, the financial recruiter stroke artist, I'm like, wow, you've now given me a multiplier that's probably more than double as to why I might connect with you. And certainly in the blink of an eye, a differentiator to someone else. And all of those kind of colors. And I just think the kind of proof is in the pudding, in a way that when you put your art into something like LinkedIn, for me, LinkedIn is it's like reading kind of the really boring business pages in the Irish Times. You're flicking through them and it's one boring white paper after another. Everyone kind of pushing their kind of services. And for the most part, I think business is really boring. But the bit of color only comes through the people. And while I'd say, when we're talking social media with people, I'd always say, never go heavy on Facebook or Instagram because you'll die a death. Greg's 13 marketing tips will die a death on Facebook. That's not to say someone won't notice it. And you might apply the same logic the opposite way on LinkedIn. Never go light on LinkedIn. I find it always works. You put something semi-interesting. It's like a breath of fresh air on these boring business channels. you're interrupting someone nicely and they're kind of like 9 to 5 workday. So I think anything that can add a bit of color to who you were, that, my God, what did you do at the weekend? Anything that's a little bit different or a bit sparky. So I think, yeah, go all in. It's who you are. And so I think that's kind of pretty cool.
I think sometimes, I think you're right. And well, you know better than me, but I do think you're right. It is disrupting that timeline with something different. And Luke does it with the podcast as well. It disrupts. It's something new. It's something creative. People are attracted to it. Sometimes I just think people might get confused as to who I am. That's the problem, I think. Some people know me as, they think I'm a professional artist. If they've just been looking at me on Facebook or Instagram, and then I've met people as candidates, qualified accountants, and they said, I know you. I didn't know you were a recruitment consultant. I thought you were an artist. Yeah. So I just feel it's actually quite, because it is quite confusing, especially because I'm an accountant. People think it's two different sides of the brain. It's not possible. So I do worry about that sometimes, putting too much of that up when my main thing, like I do okay from art. Like I paint what I enjoy painting, and if it sells, happy days. But that my main business is quite a professional business,
Yeah, it's funny actually. I had another client, and like that, I was encouraging her. She worked in business continuity, very, very senior, banking and all that kind of stuff. And I was encouraging her to get up rocking on social media, LinkedIn and everything. And her concern was similar to your own, is that she was quite a well-known artist. And she wasn't worried whether the business types would find out that she was an artist. She was more worried that the artistic followers who thought of her as being a quirky artistic type had a boring corporate job as well, so it was kind of the opposite way. Sorry, Luke, you were jumping in there.
I just couldn't agree more with you. And you're saying that the breath of fresh air on LinkedIn, when you're scrolling through LinkedIn and everyone is talking about how good the culture is, but they're not really showing you. The culture thing is an interesting thing on LinkedIn. Everyone's saying, come work here. It's the best culture, best culture. I think you can show people that it's good. You don't have to say that it's, if you want to show culture, you say it's a good place to work. Well, show happy people at work in a video, and don't say culture.
It's very easy. It's very easy to fake a photograph of everybody having a beer. It's very easy to fake a 5-minute video, actually, but it's very hard to fake long form conversation like this. That's why I think podcasts, like when I'm hiring people, I'll encourage them to listen to me on podcasts, because then they'll get to know me and they'll know if they want to work for me,
Yeah. I love what you just said, Mark, about getting to know me. And I think it's the power of them in your communications mix. You do get to learn the person, the genuine voices. There's a guy, I think I mentioned him the last day, Christopher Lockhead. He's a fantastic guy. I'm zipping along in the car listening to him. I nearly know what he's going to say in particular situations. I'm giggling at him. And I do know him because he interacts with me online and stuff. And it's actually very intimate having that voice in your head, as you're walking the dog or driving or whatever. Tell me about wedding speeches, best man speeches, Mark. How the hell did that happen?
I've done it 4 times. I think it's 4 times. Yeah, I've been, and you can do, there's 2 ways of going with a best man speech. You either panic so much that you don't do anything about it, and you just think I'll wing it on the day and people won't really notice, and that's just such a bad idea. Or you can really go all in and do a good speech, and because it's so important, because if you look, usually it's the bride, like the bride will have everything absolutely perfect. And then you have this role to play. You could really go wrong, and everybody's seen it go quite wrong. And it's so cringy, and you feel so sorry for everybody and you just want it to be over. I don't know, maybe I have an ego. I'd hate to come across as an idiot or not funny, you're not even trying to be funny. Don't try to be funny, actually. Just try to do the basics, and try to do the basics well, and have a few props or a few in jokes and use the crowd. And so I just went all in and really, really did it right the first time, and then just basically reused it over and over again, different names. Not really, but so then I just thought, I like passive income. I love anything that's kind of passive income. I sell prints of my original artwork, and I don't have to do anything. I do so many hours with the paintings, and with the prints, I could sell 100 prints completely online, and they get shipped out. And it's just such a good business model. So I read about like books as passive income. So I said, what am I an expert in? I said, I did an art book before, but it was more of a coffee table book. And then I just thought, what else do I know really? And I put a lot of research, a lot of notes together. So I put them all together, learned how to make a book, and published it on Amazon, and sells quite regularly actually. So I'm going to get involved with some wedding websites and stuff. I'm in talks with some different wedding websites and I think it sells a lot in America, in the UK, the Irish market as well, but the Irish market's quite small. That's what I love about Amazon. But basically it's a guidebook. I did a guidebook on how to give a best man speech from start to finish.
Yeah, I was at a wedding last Saturday, and the best man speech was done by your man's brother. They were boring in-family jokes that you were just waiting for it to finish, please, anytime now. So I absolutely 100% get what you're doing. But the idea of kind of researching it, going all in, and then producing a book, Luke, is he always like this, is he?
He's got this, it's like a time warp around. Like time doesn't really apply to Mark the way it does regular humans. When you look at the output of his life, like if you stack it up there, he just mentioned that he's made an art book in the past that has been published. He does all these, he's done all these gallery shows and accountant and finance and selling. He's a huge online t-shirt business that he keeps kind of to himself as well. So I mean, there's a lot of work has gone into that. I think he's got a lot more focus than a lot of people, and I think that comes across when he's talking to like candidates and stuff like that. If he's pitching something, he really does believe in it, and that comes across, I think. So if he's talking to somebody for a role or something like that, I can imagine him being very convincing because he believes it. And then if they don't believe him, he just shows them the picture of Barack Obama holding his painting and kind of just move on. Segue, but I think that's I think hours put in is more than anyone I've met. I'm not an hours guy. By the evening, I find it very difficult to do anything past 6:00. I was working till about 9 last night, and I was like, came down to my wife, said, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, and this question of time. Obviously you have your full-time jobs, you got the podcast, and Jesus Christ Almighty, Mark. From what I'm hearing here, you've got a million things on the go. How do you view time and what you do with it?
I do plan out my day. Obviously, I have lots of wasted time, but I do plan out my day. Lately, I get up quite early. I was sent a book called The Game Changer Formula. Don't know if you've ever heard of it, by Rory Prendergast, an Irish guy. He sold businesses and sailed across the Atlantic, bought a boat and sailed across the Atlantic. So we might actually have him on as a podcast. He just reached out to me. So it's kind of a mix of atomic habits and goal setting and stuff like that. So part of that is getting up at 6:00 and setting out your goals, doing a bit of meditation, getting ready for the day. And then I plan out, like if I'm looking at my list here beside me, I still, look, it's a bit much. I know it's a bit much. Like I do know that, and I am giving out. I do get given out to. I do have 2 young kids, but I'm here for them, and we go, play Gaelic and stuff like that. Like, and I like to think I am there for them, but I don't have a lot of wasted hours. Like I have a painting here of Roy Keane that I plan on finishing by the end of the week. See if I can show it to you. You won't see that on camera, but
okay, cool. I recognize him.
So it's a good, like I'm working all day, but I'm also in the evening. I'm lucky that art is actually quite a counterbalance to proper work, especially when I was an accountant. They say when you want to relax, don't do nothing, do the opposite to what you're doing. So that could be playing a guitar or whatever, getting into a flow state. So if I was to try to do certain things at night that were hard work, I would fall asleep probably. But the art, I could actually stay up to 2 a.m. in a flow state and get quite a lot of work done. So I think the output is quite high because I get into a flow state with that. And then I just sleep faster.
One of the most interesting things about Mark's time as well, and it's something that we've dug into in the past, but when he spends his time, he spends it in a very productive way. Like I love having stuff to do. I love hobbies, having things away from work completely. So I've spent a lot of time doing things where there was no financial gain. And I've invested a lot of time in things I just wanted to do, like last year I did the half Ironman. So that's a lot of training. That's like 12 hours a week training. And Mark was like, I wish you just put 12 hours into a side business, or I started learning Irish when I was 29. And he's like, it took so long and so many hours but I enjoyed it. It was part of loved going to all the classes, and we went and spent a week up in Donegal and the Gaeltacht and, all this type of stuff. And whenever Mark spends time, he always has like a product at the end that's worth something.
That's not normal though, is it? I don't know if that's balanced, to constantly be like that. I'm happy. I'm very happy about it.
Your mum and dad, what do they do?
My dad works in a company called Becton Dickinson. They're a factory. So he's like a machine operator, sorry. They make syringes for diabetics and stuff like that. So he's there 40 years. He's only 60. And he also was a barman. So he'd do 4 days on, 4 days off. And on his days off, most of them he'd work in the bar then. So he was for a double job. And yeah, maybe that's where I got that from. He's a perfectionist. He likes to do things right. I definitely got that from him. And you can see that in the paintings. My youngest is like that as well. And then my mom was, I suppose, she was a homemaker who cleaned in the mornings and minded kids and stuff like that. So she was always there for us.
Okay. Where did the art come from?
I'm convinced now that I was thinking about it. I've always had it. Like, there's nobody in the house who's particularly, or in my huge family, that's particularly artistic. I did this chalk sketch of a snowman when I was 5 in junior infants in school. And for some reason, there was some competition on, and it was to have the winning kid would have their picture shown, exhibited in the National Gallery of Ireland in town for whatever reason, some sort of kids event. But I remember it vaguely, being there and just being the center of attention, winning it for somehow. I don't know. Like, I still have it. But that was it was beside the principal's office in the school for years. I was told I was great, and I was told I was this genius because I'm in a gallery and I'm 5. It was pretty crap. Like, it really was. I cannot see anything in it. But for some reason they picked me. And ever since then, I think I just had to live up to that role that people put on me. And I do think there's something in my brain. I can definitely, whether it's photographic memory or whatever, I can definitely, my brother called me a human photocopier. Like, I don't actually think I'm that creative, to be honest. I struggle to actually go outside the lines. I actually really struggle to go outside the lines. So I'll do a portrait and it'll be hopefully almost like a photograph. And then I'll start adding little bits to make it look like a painting. Not to give away that, but yeah. So to answer it, I don't know where it comes from, but I think it might come from there.
Yeah. So if there's a brainstorm and work, we need some cool ideas for something, you might be kind of looking towards Mark because of all that. Does it work that way?
100%.
No,
I was gonna say, like, you're the aesthetics guy for the podcast for sure. Like,
yeah, they're templates. So I made the template and then I just apply that same template. So in my business, actually, my business partner is he has great ideas. He thinks outside the box. It's the joke. Like, he comes up with the idea, gives it to me, and I execute on it. I actually make it into something. So that's why we work well together. We're actually very different.
Yeah. Okay. When are you happiest, Mark?
I was actually thinking about that today for some reason. While I was in the gym, I wasn't overly happy in the gym, actually. I was a bit tired. Probably on holidays with my wife and kids. We went to Killarney. I was just sitting there reading the Game Changer Formula book. They were playing their computer games. My wife was sitting beside me, and I just thought, this is living the dream in a mobile home. But yeah, like, that is genuinely when I'm content. But I do it for them, and I'd like to upscale that from a mobile home to a holiday home or whatever that I own. So I don't know. I'm also really happy when I'm in a flow state painting and I produce something out of nothing. It's a nice feeling to produce something out of nothing, a blank canvas, and then there's something and that people appreciate. So that's probably also when I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a way, the podcasts are like that, aren't they?
Yeah. I told Luke that he should have a creative output. I have my creative output, and it doesn't have to make money. But you're actually technically getting paid to do podcasts in HubSpot now, Luke. So you
Oh,
made that a reality. So
like,
yeah, I think that is nice, isn't it?
And Mark, the opposite question: when are you pissed off? When are you definitely not happy?
I'm actually quite. I don't know if Luke would agree. I'm quite a level-headed person. Like I don't fly off the handle much at all. But I really don't like people. I don't like bad service. I like people who are like getting stuff done in the house and stuff like that. Like, and it's just not done right. Like, I just think it's absolutely unforgivable. Like, I mean, if you're going to do something, do it right. And I just can't believe some of the work we've got done in the house, for example, or bad service in a restaurant, or people who are rude to people, any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, when people don't do their job well, actually boils my blood. Other than that, I think I've actually made a life over the last few years with the new business and stuff that I always wanted, to be honest.
What's the name of the recruitment firm?
Darwin Hawkins. You're probably going to ask, where the hell did that come from? The name?
Yeah, go on.
I liked Hawk. I liked vision, search, all that kind of stuff. Niall liked Charles Darwin, origins, evolution of your career, all that kind of stuff. And both of them were taken, Hawk Recruitment and Darwin Recruitment. So we combined them, Darwin Hawk, and it didn't really sound that good. So I just added the INS at the end of it. And it sounds like, as someone said, it sounds like it's an established company that has like a mahogany table, that kind of thing.
All these old crusty types working there, you know, and giving out that they can't smoke cigars in the workplace anymore.
Yeah, that's the vibe we're giving off. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. Luke, what's happiness to you?
an interesting one. I don't think anyone's ever asked me really. You know, I think I said this recently. I've been, you know, a lot of people out there kind of struggle, have kind of mental health struggles and stuff like that. But I've always been blessed with real solid mental health. You know, I'm happy most of the time, and when I get very bad news or something goes against me, I get very angry, or very, like Mark's seen a few times, you know, growing up, I get very angry, but I'm back to level really quickly, and it's like it never happened. So for most of the time I'd be happy. Like for me, happiness is, I love being like going for walks by the seafront here in Greystones with my family. I have a 9-month-old, and I love kind of just getting out into the air with those guys. I love, you know, I probably, when I've been like, you know, before I had a family and everything like that, I think when I was happiest is when I would stop whatever career that I'm doing for like a extended period of time, and it was okay for me to do that. As in, like, I know I'm not going to be working for the next few months because I'll be in South America, or I'll be in Southeast Asia for 3 months, and it's just like a relief. And you would think that you would be stressed about not having a job to come back to and everything, but it was just like, I was really genuinely happy, you know, just bumming around Bolivia, you know, not do, you know, I just loved it. I felt
so
like
different.
Person, like, you know?
Could you even relate to that, Mark?
It's mad how different you can be to someone you get on so well with, isn't it?
I couldn't. I don't think I could. I'd love the idea of it, but I think, whoa, getting a week off at this stage is like a big deal, and maybe that's the most stupid thing ever, you know. But you do have a nice, cool, kind of relaxed aura around you, Luke. Could you see yourself being self-employed, your own gig, not in a HubSpot or whatever, where it's all on you, you know?
Probably do that next. Like I would have done it a long time ago, I think. But the way the American companies work with the restricted stock units that keep on jumping into your account every month, it gets to a point where it's a moral hazard to leave because you've got a family and everything. You know, like, yeah, it's kind of like when I was in investing. Like, you want to let your runners, or let your winners run and cut your losses. The HubSpot has gone up 2,000% since I started, and we're on such a good run that I never really got a chance to get off. I think my next move will probably be to leave HubSpot and do my own HubSpot partnership. Okay. I work with partners a lot. I understand their business. I've met some really interesting people in that industry, and I kind of envy them to a certain extent. and I've got my own ideas about what I do. So that would probably be the next move, but it could be a few years from now, maybe.
I had a boss in Guinness. He had been out in Africa. I think he was managing director of Guinness Nigeria. And then he came back to Ireland. Big package. This is like Guinness. These are top tier jobs at the time. I was asking him a similar question, and he spoke about the fur-lined mousetrap, is what he called it. You just can't get away from it. And in a way, you can take all those risks when there's nothing on the line. You have nothing to lose. And then, of course, when you get a bit more comfortable and the mortgage and responsibilities and everything all kind of start reflecting your salary, then you kind of get a little bit cut. How about you, Mark? What's happiness to you? As a general thing, what's happiness to you, if you were to describe it?
To me, probably, well, it's obvious, no worries and all that kind of stuff. None of those worries. So I think that's why I'm quite entrepreneurial, as in I'm not obsessed with money, but I do want to create wealth just to be comfortable, Yeah. I suppose to be comfortable and not to have to worry about anything.
Is there a bit of fear in that?
As in fear of having nothing?
Is fear a bit of a motivation?
Oh, obviously. Yeah. Yeah. Every day. Yeah. Even when you've got this far, I don't know what it is. If you just think you could lose everything, there's always that one wrong step, or I don't know. It's when you actually talk it through, it's actually nonsense, really. But fear of having nothing, yeah, I think everybody has that, don't they?
I don't know.
It can be a good motivator, but I'm not overly stressed either, though. I'm more extremely motivated than stressed. I think it's, what do you call it? Eustress as opposed to stress. Like it's actually, I'm stressing out because I want to produce something of good quality, and I'm stressing out because I have an important project that I actually can't wait to do, type of thing, or I just want to do it right. So no, I don't think I'm a stress head or anything like that. Not at all.
Okay. What was your best day?
Did anybody turn the question on you, Greg?
Yeah, actually, I was doing a podcast with someone the other day, and I think they gave me the best answer I've heard. I thought it was a really cool answer. They were talking about this sense of contentment and everything is cool and everything is fine. But she also spoke about the giddiness that happens from new things, that challenge and that buzz and, that thing that kind of nearly irritates you a little bit. And that mix of those things. And I thought that was really good because we all like the contentment idea, but sometimes you just don't want to be in that like flat content state at all, because I think you do need to be agitated. So I think for me, it is a mix of those things. That question about fear that I was kind of nudging you a little bit about, I think part of my motivation for a lot of the things that I've done, that fear is rooted in a lot of it. And maybe it can be a good driver with the result of it, but I don't think it's the best motivator either. I think like what you're chatting about, Luke, being able to not go for 3 months and tour around, fear won't allow you to do that. A different motivation would allow you, and I think you could go there easily, Luke. I'm kind of guessing from our conversation, that not a bother.
I think Tim Ferriss was saying as well, like he tries to put stuff that's exciting in the future, and that it's exciting to me. I love to have a bookend on something. So the thought that something's gonna, whether that's a job or something's gonna, the way I'm living right now is gonna be that way every single day forever. I like to have something like, okay, that's different. Now we have a different chapter. So like I've taken 2 big trips like that were months at a time, and I've done like climbing Kilimanjaro, going to Africa and that type of thing. Of being really afraid, not afraid, excited, but that type of like, I don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
I like to have that, as much of that as possible within reason,
And in a way, with all of us, wouldn't it be nice to trade some of those things and to have a bit more, a bit less of some of those things in all of us? So I've got one big last question for both of you to sign off on. And it might take a little bit of time to think about it, but it's, what was your best day ever? Mark, you seem to be volunteering for this.
No, I was just going to say, can we just exclude the obvious ones then? The wedding day and the birth of children. I can't say like my first child was a better day than the second child. So we say they're a given.
Oh yeah, they're a given. But often I think you kind of recognize sometimes they're very stressful days, So you know from those best man speeches that some of those days can be days just to kind of get out of the way and stuff,
Yeah, what a question. Not to have so much dead air here, but Luke, have you got any?
Yeah, like obviously the birth of the first child, the wedding days, great. I tell you, but if you put those aside, I think I know, like I've talked about, I think because it was just such a big impact on my life. I talk about that trip I took for a couple of years and came back to Ireland. But I remember the day I came back to Ireland from after all the traveling around and all that type of stuff. And I knew that I felt like an immigrant in Ireland, and it was a lovely feeling. I felt like this is a fresh start. I can do whatever I want here. I'm going to really kind of give it a go. And I said, I'm not going to do any more traveling for a long time. And then I was on a plane to Boston 2 weeks later because I had started with HubSpot and training was in Boston. But that's another thing. But I remember that day when I came back to Ireland after all the kind of trials and tribulations out there, and I was delighted. It was the whole life in front of me.
Yeah, cool.
Big day.
That's a good best day.
I don't know if I can match that now. I've had a lot of milestones for sure that I can think of. Like, I found it a lot of it is coming from stressful situations. I found it quite hard to do the accountancy exams. That was probably the biggest achievement I've ever felt. And I slipped a disc in my back. I couldn't walk at the time, so I was studying on my back, and I failed one, and I had to wait a year to do it, and then I passed it. That was probably the most relief I've had, but that's not the best day. But and then when I sold my first painting for like big money, that was great as well. But I'd say, and I don't want them to be all about like, again, they're all about work and stuff like that. But when I left my employment, when I handed in my notice 3 years ago, that was a paradigm shift, I think, for me. I'd always found it hard to work for other people. I always got on well with everybody, but I kind of found it hard to take orders, even polite orders. I always did them, but there was something in me, it didn't fit right with me. And to think that I'd calculated it quite well up to that point, I was ready now, and I was 33 or whatever. And I had this future ahead of me, and I was excited. And we went to a local tennis club. Me and my business partner, we both handed in a notice on the same day, and we had a few beers, and it was roasting out overlooking the tennis courts. And then I went home and obviously told my wife and stuff, like, this is when it all starts. And that was a nice day.
That's a huge day, isn't it? That is a huge, huge day.
There's no going back. I wanted to get a painting. I can't remember the artist. It's like the burning of the ships or something when Cortez went to America or whatever it was. One of those kind of...
The conquistadors.
Yeah, I wanted to get one of them. I never got it in the end. But yeah, there's kind of no going back from that, I think. So it was exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time.
Are you winning happy, Luke? Are you winning happy?
I don't think I've ever been happier, and winning enough to get by, let's say.
Yeah, that's cool. And when I always talk about winning, that depends on what your goalposts are. It doesn't have to be money, whatever your objectives are. And how about you, Mark? Are you winning happy?
Yeah, definitely. It hasn't been easy, but it shouldn't be easy. I'm winning happy, yeah.
You see, I know you'd say something like it shouldn't be easy. Luke, do you think it should be easy?
I think I know I've got a picture. How with this? I've got a painting behind me of Bono that Mark painted for a gift for me, and I'll leave it with this Bono's quote: "You've got to live with your dreams. Don't make them so hard." I think that's Mark's problem the whole time. It'll be easy,
And I actually, and this is some of my kind of marketing bullshit coming in, or maybe my perspective on things. You said that's Mark's problem. I actually disagree with you. I actually think it's Mark's opportunity. Because if Mark can crack that code, that's the best life ever. And boys, I really enjoyed the conversation with the two of you. And this is the second one we've had. I think we find out a little bit more every time we kind of dig a little bit deeper. I'm really looking forward to meeting you and having a pint.
I think we'll definitely come down to Cork.
Yeah, we can pick respective venues. I'm bringing you to the Enniscar bar, that old man bar that I think I told you about. Yeah, it's just fantastic. Where will you drive me to in Dublin?
What's the Dublin one, Mark, that you're in? I'm a country boy now.
I think Greystones, Luke. That's where it's at now.
Yeah, maybe a beach house down there. We'll get an outdoor table. Yeah. Just gotta live in the high life.
Boys, thank you so much. Take it easy.
All right.
Great stuff. Thanks a million, Greg.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.